house in Baltimore down here, and there are people that I know they're legend, and I've never met them, and I've been honored to meet so many people in 34 years now of doing sports radio and sports media here in Baltimore. This guy is only a name to me, and we have many, many friends, including our pal Kerry Behagian, who runs WBAL Radio, who did radio with this guy many, many moons ago. He ran the Colts, ran the Patriots, made a life in Boston, and his new book with our Kimo Sabi, Ron Borges from the Talk of Fame Network, is Present at the Creation, My Life in the NFL and the Rise of America's Game. This guy cut his teeth in Baltimore. I've never met him. I've never interviewed him. I've never spoken to him, and this is a real honor and a privilege and a pleasure to have Upton Bell join me here. Tell me, Upton Bell, about the legend of 33rd Street and Super Bowl III and Super Bowl V. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. There is no other town in America like Baltimore. It is the version of the great play and movie Our Town. It existed. I don't know if it exists the same way today, but if you wanted to write a fairy tale or a great story, including the movie Diner, which, by the way, I spent a lot of time at the Fells Point Diner at 2, 3, and 4 o'clock in the morning. But Baltimore was a town that, unlike any other, it was totally in love with its football team. And I know the Ravens now have huge crowds and beautiful stadium, and they've won 2 Super Bowls in the 2000s. But there was nothing like the Baltimore Colts. It was a love affair with the city and the team. You could go in anywhere, Nestor, anywhere in Baltimore. They knew the players. They knew the front office. They knew the gossip. You didn't need a social network. You didn't need Twitter or Facebook. The Twitter and Facebook was every bar, every restaurant, every bus stop, Friendship Airport. It was there. And those players, and it's funny because my father, who had dropped dead in 1959 at the last couple of minutes of a football game, used to say to the players all the time around the NFL, remember, men, this is only a means to an end. He said you have to get your life in order so when the day is over, and by the way, nothing has changed. It's still 3.5 years average life of a football player. But he said, get into your community, settle in, get a job there, have a future. Well, the players in Baltimore and the fans, but the players literally took it to heart. Most of the players lived there year-round. Most of the players were in the community, and the fans absolutely loved it. And you're never going to get that today. It's a completely different thing. Everybody has an agent. The players keep away from the fans except when they want to use them. But then it was amazing. Church times were changed on Sunday. News on Thursday and Friday. The highest rated show, including the national shows, was called Corrallin' the Colts. Every Monday night after a Sunday game, whether it was Weeb Eubank or Don Shula, I don't know whether it's continued after I left, but I mean, millions of people tuned in to see a show that literally, I would tell you today, was absolutely boring. But they loved it. They wanted to hear from Coach Shula and the players, and they would run then that was called film, and it ran for a half an hour. The world stopped when it was on. And that was the town that I came to. It was blue collar. Many of the players, before I even came there, they had jobs. They were welders. They were pipe fitters. They were salesmen. They did everything, and they still went to practice. And in 58 and 59, maybe one of the great 2-year dynasties, probably should have gone longer until they got people hurt in 1960. But I can tell you this, it books after books have been written about it. And I can tell you this, how big it was. John Unitas walking through an airport anywhere in America. Now, this is, again, before the explosion of the social media as we know it today. Any airport in America, and everybody knew him. Johnny U, how's the crew cut? In fact, one time in L.A. at the airport when we were going out there to play for 2 weeks. In those days, you stayed out there, you played in L.A. and then went down to San Francisco. Clark Gable who was bigger than anything today. And this is, again, in a time when people, watch television, went to the movies and read the newspapers and the gossip columns. Clark Gable was bigger than anything you know today. And he saw Unitas in the airport, and he walked over and he said, "You're the one person in life I want to meet." That's the world that I saw, and that's the world that will never come back, and that's fine. But I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, as they say, you really missed something.
I love you already, Upton Bell. I've never had a conversation with Upton Bell. He's carrying the show here. I'm just going to drink some coffee and let him promote the book. Present at the Creation, My Life in the NFL and the Rise of America's Game, with his dear friend and my dear friend, Ron Borges, who spent a little bit of time here in Baltimore, and of course is at the Boston Herald as part of our Talk of Fame network on Sunday afternoons. I want to give a shout-out to our favorite crab cake place on the east side, my hometown, Costas Inn. It's good enough for the Today Show, as well as my mom. They got fat crabs, cold beer. The legend continues at Costas Inn, and you can order the Costas Inn crab cakes. Big thanks to them for my Dundalk High Hall of Fame celebration a couple of weeks ago. Also want to give a shout out to our friends at King Discount Liquors. They got lottery, booze, beer, and the best prices in Baltimore. You got to stock up over there for the holiday season. Get to Rosedale and give the King a ring. And I know Upton Bell would say that's not Jim Parker's liquor store, but it's the best we can do these days. Paul King certainly taking care of folks at Rosedale. So the book is out with you and Ron, and I got like about a billion questions. I can't wait for you to come to Baltimore at some point, and we'll sit down over maybe one or two adult refreshments and talk about John Stedman. And you mentioned all the years here, and I've now written 2 books on football to keep the life of John Stedman alive after the first championship with Brian Billick and David Modell, the late David Modell, and with Marvin Lewis, as well as after this one with Joe Flacco and John Harbaugh. And next to my nightstand, I have literally 2 or 3 books. One of them is From Colts to Ravens. It's the Stedman book. I was credited in the end because I talked to a couple of people for the book and got random some quotes and whatnot through Ernie Accorsi or whatever. And when I think of all of you guys, and when I say you guys, dude, I mean Cameron Snyder and Larry Harris and John Stedman and Jack Dawson and Chuck Thompson on the media side. And I think about all the players and the Arties and and Lenny and Mutchler, all those guys that I got to know, Ordell Bracey as an older guy. But my dad, one of my dad's highlights of his life is that he helped carry Ordell Bracey off the field after 59, and he always talked about that. Like that was the championship, and he was a part of it, and he was on the field, and he stormed the field because that's what you did then. And I grew up in that kind of a household, and of course the Aparicio side of my last name is the baseball side of my family and the Aparicio family. I mean, I grew up in a sports household, but my father was a part of all of that, and those number 22 bus rides and getting hot dogs at G&A Coney Island in Highlandtown that are still the best hot dogs in the world, and they're one of our sponsors as well. And my dad talked about all of that all through my childhood in the 70s when you were trying to come in here and beat us with Randy Vataha and Hannah and Grogan and Sam the Bam and all those guys. And I guess your story is so rich with all of this because of your father being the commissioner. So my first question to you would be, if I had you on a stand, and I think I could talk to you for 3 hours about this, what would your dad make of the National Football League in 2017, 2018, Upton?
I get that question every day, and by the way, I will tell you that a book is coming out next year about the original 6 owners of the NFL. And the author, John Eisenberg, you know him?
I know John very, very well.
Yeah.
John's a regular around these here parts. One of my mentors, actually.
Well, he called me and asked me a lot of questions for the book, and he sent me a really nice email, and he said, you know what? He said, I don't think the original 6 owners, the Burt Bells, the Art Rooneys, Rosenblum, people like that, he said, I don't think they'd like what's going on today. And I don't think Burt Bell would ever be critical of it because he looked at it probably as his time. But I think what he would look at is the thing that concerns me about the game. There's a couple of things about the game today. And again, I want to tell the young people that listen to your show, I am not living in the past. It was great. I look at today for what it is. The players are better. the game has been totally changed, and it's become a game of throwing the football 3 out of 4 downs, almost like Canadian football. There are 32 teams. 16 of them probably couldn't play years ago because they're so bad. There are not enough quarterbacks. There are a lot of problems. The reason, by the way, Nestor, that the ratings are down in the NFL has nothing to do with players kneeling or the Donald Trump trumped up phony, fraudulent charge against the players in the league. It is because the product is not good. It is, you turn a lot of games on now, and I have the Red Zone. I have 2 other TVs. I'm watching everything, and I can tell you that there are many reasons younger people wanted things on their phones. They won't sit there for 2 or 3 or 4 hours and watch a game. But more importantly, if you watch it long enough, you say, my God, this isn't very good.
Well, I have pointed that out from, and I think that's one of the reasons 20,000 people stayed away last Thursday night. I mean, and it turned out it wasn't a very good game, even though we won 40-0. But there's a point in this where, to your point, when you've got half the quarterbacks banged up, you got J.J. Watt out, the guys who can make plays. I mean, what happened to Flacco in the Thursday night game against Miami? It's just, I mean, that's the worst case scenario for anyone in the NFL is to have a sliding quarterback have his head taken off. That just should never happen. That should be like you're gone for 4 weeks, a month, a year, 100. I mean, it shouldn't be 15 yards. That's maybe the old line football guys would say, well, we used to play the game that way. You can't play the game that way anymore.
No, you can't play the game that way now. And the other thing is that hit me, and I was talking to some of the writers up here about it, is every game it appears like the Battle of Britain. They're carrying somebody off. And I think about when the players were smaller and not quite 300 pounds, and someday they will be 400 pounds, is the hits were more vicious back in the 50s and 60s, but the players, you didn't have 300-pounders colliding. Now, if you watch every game, I count a Sunday, 15 people were carried off the field. I mean, you might go 3 years in the NFL of the 50s and 60s and even the 70s, and you wouldn't see this terrible carnage. And it's because the collisions are horrific. And they can get all the equipment they want, but they've stopped the head-to-head shots to a degree. But then you have to put your arms around people and tackle them. Now they're flying missiles. And I'm just telling you, it's going to get worse. And if it's a game now because they have changed the rules, it is a game of quarterbacks. If you don't have a quarterback, you're going nowhere. And out of the 32 teams, maybe 10. You happen to be lucky because you've got Flacco, but he's not been healthy the last couple of years. And a healthy Joe Flacco, even if your team is not as good as it was in the 2 championship years, 2 Super Bowl years, he's still good enough to get you by. But look around the league. I mean, there's just not enough quality. The other thing that I would say, and probably my father would at least address in some way, maybe privately, is it's become a game of let's build ourselves not only a stadium, let's build hotels around it, an amusement park, nice diners and stuff like that, and we'll get the teams or the draw, but really in the end, we're going to make the money off of like Patriot Place here. I mean, a bunch of stores and restaurants and everything else like that. And I have nothing against Progress, but the owner today is not a football owner. The owner of today is an entrepreneur. He is somebody that is looking at, and again, that's fine. That's the way it's going. Jerry's World in Dallas. I mean, that is a facility, and the facility next to it that just happens to have the Cowboys as a draw. But really, they make their money with all of the other events, restaurants, shops, hotels. It's the same way as the megalopolis going up in L.A. That's nothing about the football team. So that's what you get. The owner of today, completely different, multi-millionaire or billionaire, but their fight is about money, not about the game.
He is Upton Bell. The book is Present at the Creation, My Life in the NFL and the Rise of America's Game. If you don't know who Upton Bell is, please Google him, wiki him. His pops ran the league. He was running the Colts back at Super Bowl III and V, went on to New England, and a life doing what I do, right? You talked about sports for a living for a long time, and the book idea came up with Ron Borges. The book is brand new. You can go check it out on Amazon, anywhere books is sold, or books are sold, I should say. Books is sold. That's great. Upton, the book and thoughts about the book and why the book and why now?
Well, again, familiar faces. I had been talking, Ernie, of course, and I have been lifelong friends. Of course, was at the Colts, then Cleveland, then the Giants, and I still keep in touch with him today. So about 2 years ago, he said to me, Upton, you keep telling me all these stories going all the way back into the 30s. He said, you really should write a book. I said, you know what? I'll probably take all of them to the grave with me because I have no interest in writing a book. He said, well, you ought to get somebody that maybe is familiar enough with the game and sit down with that person over a period of time and maybe look at doing a book. So I had talked to some people in New York who were really interested in doing it. But then I said, who is left, who is around that would understand the 40s and 50s and what it might have been then, and also what had his foot in today. And that's when I picked up the phone and called Ron Borges, who I knew, and I said, you know what? You've been around for 42 years. You have some understanding of what I want to tell you about the past, but you're also a present-day writer. So therefore, I'm not somebody that's going back and saying, geez, it was great then, but then I have nothing to say about now. So this actually began, Nestor, about 3.5 years ago because I had a really serious accident and had to lose 6 months out of the book. But he and I started to sit down, and actually what I was looking for was not somebody to record history, although this is more than just a football book. This is a recording and a look at history past of America and the game and America today and the game. So anybody that gets this book, I think it's an American original because I actually take a look at the country as it was at the dawn of the century and all the way through how football in the country changed all the way to today. It's also, by the way, a story of my mother, Frances Upton, who was a Ziegfeld Folly star, went on to make movies. In fact, you can get one of her movies, which I didn't know about till somebody told me, on YouTube, and it's called Night Work, Frances Upton. It was one of the first talkies. Her story is unbelievable, which is in the book. Without Frances Upton, I believe that there would be no NFL, because when she met my father at a party in New York, he was continuing to blow his father's money, going to great parties, having a great time, coaching at Penn, where he played and threw the first forward pass in Rose Bowl history. But she was discovered working in Macy's as a counter perfume salesperson when she was in high school. An agent came around and said, I'm a Broadway agent. He said, you're a beautiful woman. He said, what do you do? She said, well, I take ballet and do some acting in high school. 4 years later, she was a star in Broadway at the age of 21. She then went on to become engaged to the great Bernard Baruch, the financier's son. She broke the engagement, met my father at a party, and she said to him, you know what, you're involved in college football. You go to get with it and get with the pro game. She said, have you ever seen Red Grange and the traveling Chicago Bears? Have you ever seen the New York Giants? And she went on and on and on. And finally, actually, he began taking her to college games. Well, they secretly got married. The story was broken by Walter Winchell, the famous columnist at the time. And they got married one day on the steps of a church in Philadelphia. She lent him the money to buy the Frank Fragella jackets out of bankruptcy. They walked down to go to City Hall, saw up on a big billboard the National Recovery Act Eagle, and my father said, that's the name of the team, the Philadelphia Eagles. And there it went. without her influence, because years later, very few years later, he invented the thing that saved the NFL and every pro franchise in every sport, the NFL draft. That's Bert Bell's baby. If it didn't, the league was beginning to fail. The rich teams like the Bears and the Giants, they were the ones that dominated. The Redskins, they dominated pro football. The rest of them, like Bell and Rooney and many of the other franchises, they were failing. And he went to a league meeting and said, gentlemen, we're only as strong as our weakest link. And right now, I'm one of the weak links, and so are other teams. If we do not band together, we will fail together. And he convinced the owners, the rich owners, rich at that time, which was nothing, to go along with this draft. And they had the first one in 1936. And that's why many people think he's the father of the modern game. So without Francis Upton, there ain't no game.
Socialist style football distribution, right?
No, absolutely. And again, that was tried many times in court to have that abolished.
And still will probably be in the future as well, I'm sure, right?
As long as there is a game, there has to be a draft. No draft, no game.
Upton, I'll tell you what, man, I'm going to cut this one for now, but we're going to get together again at some point. I know you want to come back home to Baltimore and pimp your book out. I want to be a part of it and get a cocktail. I can't wait to get my hands on it. It's so new. I don't have it yet. Present at the creation, Upton Bell with Ron Borges, both of our pals here who with Baltimore links and Colts links, My Life in the NFL and the Rise of America's Game. You can follow Upton out on Twitter, Facebook, everywhere that books are sold. You can go find the book. And Upton, I'll just say farewell for now, but our time will come again. We'll talk some more football again soon. I'm looking forward to that. I've really enjoyed having you on the program.
Nestor, on you Baltimore Colts.
On you Baltimore Colts. There you go. I'll start humming the song and like doing it on the kazoo if you keep that going. I used to do that back in the old days. You can find me anywhere the internet is served in the BuyAToyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day. From anywhere you happen to be, even up in New England where Upton Bell's hanging out these days. Want to give a shout out to our friends at Coppin State University. We here at WNST.net, we are the home for Eagles basketball this winter on the radio side as well as on the web. You can learn more at CoppinStateSports.com and make sure we're following Juan Dixon around here as well. Also want to give a shout out to our friends in Essex, Al Seafood. They've been doing crabs longer than anyone. Believe it or not, it is the oldest crab house in Baltimore. It's still Stemmers Run in Eastern. Chad the Crab Man is my man there. I've been getting crabs and crab cakes there since the 1970s. He's got a lot of great crab and crab cake sponsors here in Baltimore. I would highly recommend you take advantage of all of them. If you haven't been to Al's, make sure you're getting down there off the 702 and checking that out. Our morning newspaper delivers to your email inbox free of charge each and every morning. It is all powered up by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life, guaranteed. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. If there's any breaking news on Joe Flacco or anything else, you're going to get that first on the WNST text service. That is all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And Dennis Colatzos will be here on Thursday getting you ready for the weekend as he always does. That is the SSV on WNST, all presented by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.